We trudged through the field to our spot under the pine tree, a blanket under her arm. No longer short and scrawny, the pine was enormous, probably 25 feet tall by the first day of summer 2016. Kelly called it my pine tree so often in the first few years of our relationship that I made a sign and planted it next to the tree, surprising her at our fifth anniversary campfire. Kelly's pine was there for the biggest moments of our life together. We fell in love watching it glow that first Christmas, conceived our son under it, said our vows next to it, and celebrated every anniversary as it stood nearby. A living, breathing security blanket and a symbolic growth chart for our lives together. That's just one passage from my book, my debut novel, Kelly's Pine. My name is Jay Grochowski, and I really appreciate you watching this video. It's Kelly's Pine has been selected for the Indy, Illinois, for independent uh, publishers, the Indy, Illinois Biblio Project. So it's available through in libraries throughout the state. Also, it's available on Amazon and either an ebook format or paperback. Tim Little, my narrator producer, is just now in post production, so soon it'll be available in audiobook as well. If not by the end of July, probably by early August. I wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about the book. It's doing really well. I'm humbled. I'm humbled and so pleased that people really seem to enjoy it, that it made it into the Biblio project. So I wanted to take a little time today, give you a little bit of the background of myself and the book and sort of where it comes from and the themes and things, hopefully to entice you to want to read it. And if you've already read it, hopefully I'll talk to some of the maybe you had some questions about where the ideas, the characters, and things come from. Uh, I have a Facebook page. It's Facebook/Kelly's Pine, no apostrophe, and on there I get a bunch of questions all the time, and people will reach out to me. So I've also written down a few of the questions, so that'll help me sort of guide me through this video to give you the type of background and things that I hope to accomplish. So I'm broadcasting from my home in Plainfield, Illinois. I'm from Lisle, Illinois, just down the street. Graduated from Lisle High School in 1977. Left Lisle and majored in journalism at Indiana University, Bloomington, Indiana, where I also captained the baseball team. After I graduated from Indiana for 2 years, I was the head baseball coach, sports information director, and taught journalism at George Williams College in Downers Grove, Illinois. I left there and embarked on a 35-year sales career, and that's what I do today. So I'm not a full-time writer. Actually, I wrote an awful lot of this book while I was on the road doing my job, hotels, airports. It certainly gave me something to do, and it was something I always wanted to do, use my journalism degree. I've always loved to write. So I was about a year and a half into writing it before I told anybody I was even attempting. This was my first attempt, and I didn't know if I'd be able to see it through. An awful lot of people say they want to write the great American novel. So I don't know if it's great, but it's American and it is a novel. And so far, the response, well, it's been humbling. I'm so pleased and really honored that people seem to love the book as much as they do. And I really tried to accomplish a book told by a narrator and in real person speak that the Eddie Blackburn is my protagonist and I wanted to put him on paper as if he's Eddie next door. Like everybody knows Eddie. He talks like normal people would. So that was my goal. And then I weaved sports in and out of the book. Baseball is my background, so there's baseball in the book. Um, some girls basketball. As a bleacher dad, I probably watched 1,000 girls basketball games. But what I wanted to do was create a book about fatherhood and sacrifice, and that's really the core of Kelly's Pine. Fatherhood, sacrifice, using sports as the vehicle to deliver the message, uh, and how families all rally around sports, kids sports in particular. Some of the craziness that you see as people are chasing scholarships and spending big money and big travel and club teams and school sports. Um, and how it can bind families together, but in some cases, unfortunately, it can create big problems within a family. So Kelly's Pine uses sports to tell the familial story, and it's a love story. Also, very much at its core, it's a love story. So, hopefully, I was successful in delivering all those messages. I watched from the bleachers and from the dugout, and as a scout and a recruiter in athletics, I saw an awful lot of the craziness surrounding it. People by chasing the scholarships, kids getting burned out, injured, uh, not wanting anything to do with sports after a while, um, and how it you really as a father and as a parent you have to walk that fine line, as you have to do with the rest of everyday life. So that's really the core of Kelly's Pine. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to uh, go over some of the things, some of the questions that I think best tell the story, and the things that people have dropped on my Facebook page. Uh, what were your goals for Kelly's Pine? And do you think you accomplished them? Great question. I my biggest goal was I wanted, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I wanted the characters to be relatable. I told it in the first person from the protagonist's viewpoint, which is Eddie Blackburn. I wanted people to look at the characters and listen to them and how they talk and how they react and really go, gosh, I want to know more about them. I want to find out what happens to them. And so that was my goal. A lot of books, personally, when I read a book, um, sometimes there's so many characters I lose track of who's who, and sometimes I have to go backwards to now who is this person again. I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to make sure that I didn't do that, and we ended up confusing the I ended up confusing the reader. So I wanted to make them relatable. Uh, I wanted a really good ending, and all along the way, I wanted people to laugh, cry. Um, People in everyday life can say funny things, so I wanted to make sure that I put them in there and find themselves in humorous situations, but also um, sentimentality. It's easy to write tragedy. If you want to make people cry as an author, just write something really tragic, and you'll make them cry. But I don't know that seems a lot easier than to bring out the emotions and things from a sentimentality standpoint, to tell a story that makes people go, wow, that's touching. So um, I, I those are my two big goals, and a story that people would put it down and go, "Yeah, I want to know more. I feel like I'm leaving a friend when I leave this book or a series of friends. What are your favorite parts of the book that maybe turned out better than you originally thought? I love that question. I haven't been asked that question. I've done some author chats, socially distanced author chats, and some virtual ones and things, but that was the first time. Um, the ending is certainly a big part of it. I wanted to write a really good ending, and actually, I wrote about 40% of the book and liked where it was going, but I didn't know how I was going to end it. Uh, then it kind of dawned on me on how I might want it. So I actually skipped, there's 33 chapters. I actually wrote chapter 33 after I had written about chapter 15 or 16. Once I knew where I was going to take the book, then filling in the remainder all the way up and leading up to it seemed easier. So it might have been sort of a backwards way to do it. It's my first book, so it's the only way I've ever done it. But um, I think it really turned out well. I'm so proud of that ending, and I loved it from the start. And right at the midnight hour, I added 12 words at the very end. Those 12 words added a whole nother layer. And I'm finding that when people talk to me about the book, one of the things that they really, really like is the ending and sort of a yes moment. So I thought it was good without it, and I think it's really, really good. And so I'm so proud of that, and that surprised me. The other piece that I really wanted to convey, and what I really like about it as I've gone through there, is I've watched a lot of sports movies, read sports books, being an athlete and a coach and a scout and a bleacher parent. Um, a lot of books will turn me off because I can tell that the author's really never been there. So I wanted the dialogue. I wanted the situations and things to really bring the reader into the team bus and the locker room and the dugout and onto the court and the bench and among the parents sitting in the group. I wanted it to be real. A book will lose me if characters aren't very real, in my estimation, and especially sports books will lose me if the sports seem phony or contrived or really artificial. Somebody really is trying to imagine what they would say. I've been there. So I just said what people would say, even as in some cases fairly inelegant as it could be. I'm really proud of that piece. Uh, the characters in your book seem so real. Are they actual people? No, the answer is no. Everything, it's kind of like a varietal wine. It's, 20% this grape, 50% that grape. Uh, People are the same way. And I can, things that people said and did, and the people I imagine in my mind as I'm creating the characters, I can see and hear some of the people that I base them on, but nobody is real. And then I would just fill in the blank with fiction. I would imagine how to try to enrich that character and bring it all to life. But yeah, it's 100% fiction. But like anything, if you're a writer, I found out in a hurry that an awful lot of what you write is really based on your eyes and ears, things you've seen and done. And not only was I in athletics, but my job has taken me to every state in the union except Alaska, and stayed in a hotel in every state in the union. So I also see different cultures and people and historical markers and how they talk and how activities and sports and things are different in the West Coast than the Midwest than the South than the Northeast. So it's all sort of a conglomeration of that. Um, how did you decide to start writing your novel? Did you just sit down one day and start? Uh, I had the story, the 142,000 words in Kelly's Pine. It, it it was rolling around in my head, segments and pieces of it, and I always wanted to write a book. But actually, I was in Mankato, Minnesota on business one day. There's a baseball field right down the street from my customer. I'd see that baseball field every time I was there. I had this story kind of rolling around in my head. One day, I finished up my sales call, drove the block or so, parked my car. The gates were open. They were doing some maintenance, but there wasn't a baseball game going on. And I wrote what in effect was the first piece of baseball in the book, and it's in chapter 2. But it was the very first words I wrote. I sat in the empty stadium and imagined as I'm writing, I imagined watching. I'd watch it and I'd write it. I'd watch it, but it was all in my head. There weren't actually people running around on the field. So, um, but it really helped. And once I started writing and I liked that first chapter, then I was hooked. And it took me 2.5 years of writing to write it, those first words, until I published it this past March. So it's been out a little over 90 days. And like I said, the reception's been so strong. I'm really pleased. And the realism is the part that people seem to like. But I just decided that day to write it, but the story had been in my head for quite a while. The final question that I have uh, is I read I read Kelly's Pine and really hated to say goodbye to the Blackburns. Please tell me we'll see them again. The Blackburns are the story is told by Eddie Blackburn, and it revolves around his family and extended family and his wife Kelly and her family, the Swansons. Will you see them again? I'm pleased to say yes, yes. I've started I've started putting together notes and things, so we'll be revisiting Mankato, Minnesota. That's all I'll tell you. That's not I don't know much more than that, but I wouldn't be writing it and even considering it so soon if the response hadn't been so good, and people truly wanting to know how it turns out or what's next for the family. So um, yep. So I don't have an end date. I'm not sure when I'll start actually typing, but I am putting the notes together, and it'll be, the second edition, the second in the series, if you will. It may only be a two-book series. I don't know, but yes, there'll be a second one. So that's all I had for today. I really appreciate it. I hope if you've watched this all the way to the end, that you're intrigued and interested, and will give Kelly's Pine a read. It's been the fulfillment of a goal of mine. I always wanted to write a book. I'm so pleased with the response, and I hope that you'll all give it a look, and you'll love Kelly's Pine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the video, and please be safe and enjoy Kelly's Pine. Thank you.